Pull up all black, get it right quick. Ay. Your girl on my side, she my sidekick. Ay. First round draft, that's the right pick. Ay. You already know, like a sidekick. Pull up all black, get it right quick. Your girl on my side, she my sidekick. First round draft, that's the right pick. 3, 2, 1, let's get it.
Hello and welcome to the very first podcast in the FC Galactico podcast series with myself, Darren O'Callaghan, and my very good friend, my co-founder and fucking terrific footballer, Mr. Barry Douglas. So before I dive into introducing this episode, it's probably worth at this stage reiterating some context around what we're trying to do and the bigger picture almost, I guess. So FC Galactico is football's most powerful and innovative psychological hub, built brick by brick over the last 15 years by myself and the latter stages by Bash to attempt to stratosphere forward the way psychological tools are used in professional football. So currently, as we touch on in the episode, there's this nagging stigma in football, despite people's best efforts, that psychology is the place that you visit when you're mentally broken and you have nowhere else to turn. And whilst that is the case for some people, and it can be that absolute lighthouse for the times you are in need, psychology is much broader than that. Psychology in football can be used to optimize and enhance performance significantly. So let's take, for example, that elite athletic performance is about 90% psychological. 90%, which means that if you have never incorporated a psychological system into your game, you are cutting yourself off from 90% of your potential. In a game of millimeters and 0.1% making all the difference, 90% is fucking seismic. But this is not just about football, of course. We want to dig into those psychology tools that successful footballers and athletes and authors and stuff use that can be applied to life too. Because if we take the core of what we're trying to achieve is to get this point across that talent and elite success in anything is all about control of that talent. So how can you bring that talent to the fore when things are not going your way? How can you ensure that that talent stays at its best level when things are going your way? This is all a bundle of psychological tools that we're sadly never ever taught, and we're tragically never ever taught in football. And so what we want to try and do is uncover some of those. And FC Galactico was built for that very purpose. So we offer seismic, and I understand I've said the word seismic twice now, but it's the only word that can accurately do justice to what I'm offering, which is competitive advantage like you would never believe for professional footballers, for professional clubs, for academies. And hopefully with this podcast, we can extend that into people's lives too. I think that no one on planet Earth would ever feel worse by learning some additional mental tools and having the confidence to deep dive into their own mind. And that's what we have done in this first episode. So we cover Bash's career, of course we do, but I've tried to make it less about, tell me about your fucking favorite color when you were 10, and more about, right, you've had a sustained period of success. Many, many people on this planet don't even get a fraction of that. What makes you so different? You know, what is your secret? And when things weren't going so well, how did you cope with that? And that's what we'll be trying to do every single week. So me and Bash are going to be co-hosting, as I said before. But this episode I thought would be a good first time out to grill him, because I don't want to turn this into a love-in, and fucking aren't we all brilliant, but he is probably one of the most mentally strong people that I have ever met. Very, very very, very controlled in life, I think, and in control of his mind. And I mean that in sense of how he optimizes himself, how he deals with storms, but also how he's vulnerable enough with himself that he can go, right, they need a solution for this, you know? And he always tells me how much I've taught him since we met, but I can assure you that the feeling is very, very mutual. And I have learned just as much from Bash as he has from me. And we share a lot of the same values, which I think is why, you know, we're such close friends. We keep it real, and we both are genuinely aimed with FC Galactico at trying to do something good, of trying to, you know, if one person, one footballer or one person in life is optimized by what we have to say, or find themselves 1% better, then the job has been done. And so, yes, I hope you very much enjoy this. I'm sure we will get better at podcasting as the weeks go on. And we've got some incredible guests lined up. Ruben Neves and Stuart Downing, Jack Harrison, loads of cool people. Ryan Holiday, loads of really cool people coming up. But this episode is just me and Bash diving into his extraordinary career and the successes that has led to that stage. Before we do jump in, we didn't do the whole sponsor thing because I didn't want to. In fact, I've rejected a load of sponsors up to now because I didn't want it to be some corporate shite from day one. It might change as I get a bit greedy and the numbers start filling in and the offers start rolling in. I'm just joking. We just didn't want to do the corporate thing from day one, but I will give some shout outs to a few of my favorite brands. So Mojo Bars, Indie Rock Bars, the greatest night out you will ever have in your life is Mojo. Much like the rest of the hospitality industry, they took a blow. But if any single chain of bars and any brand in the world can survive the year of rubbish we've just been through, then that is the brand to do it. I've had some of my best night outs ever in Mojo all my life. The owner, Martin, is one of my very dear friends in this world. And yeah, just get down to Mojo and show him some love. And one of the very few places left in the UK in terms of bars where it's still cool to dance on tables and sing Don't Look Back in Anger at 3:00 in the morning. It's just incredible night out. So yeah, go and check that out in Leeds or Manchester or Harrogate or Nottingham. And then the second shout out for a brand is Mighty P. So Mighty are plant milks and they are incredible. So I know plant milks are all the rage across the board, but there's still some negative associations with the use of soy and the use of almond and things like that. But Mighty P is just levels above. So not only is it a bucket load of protein per glass, it's creamier than milk, it tastes nicer than real milk, it has more calcium, it has less sugar. It's just delicious. And more importantly than anything else, perhaps, is the fact that it doesn't require the inhumane treatment of any cows. So check them out if you're in Waitrose or on Ocado or Tesco or Asda. Mighty P milk, plant milk, absolutely brilliant. But without further ado, I will stop waffling on and let's deep dive into this episode. I hope you very much enjoy it. I hope you bear with us while we learn to be as good podcasters as we are psychologist, me, and footballer Bash. We're trying our little best, but we're doing it with a very, very good intention. So I really hope that you stick with us and give us time to learn and grow. And yes, I hope you very much enjoy it. Much love.
Just a handsome bust there.
Oh man, you fucking your hairline's holding up so well, man. I'm jealous as fuck.
32 in September as well. Bosh.
Fucking don't piss about, do you? And your hairline still looks fucking glorious even from this angle. Don't stop tensing. Fucking don't tense up. So man, look at us. Numero uno, FC Galactico podcast, long time
FC
coming.
Galactico in the
Like,
making, in
well,
the
fuck.
making.
And I guess the first point to start is, what is FC Galactico? Well, it's ours. It's ours. So we recently co-founded, I'm not even going to be fucking coy here, football's most powerful psychological hub ever. And I guess it's based on the notion that there's a fucking stratospheric gap between football's perception of psychology, e.g., that there's some place that you go when you're mentally broken, and the reality, which is it's this incredible weapon that can be used to optimize your performance. So if we look at like the NFL and the NBA, it's perfectly normal in these leagues and with these elite players that they train in the morning physically and then they go and see their performance psychologist in the afternoon. Like, that's just normal. In British football, it's still a little bit of a lag. I think it's very slowly starting to catch up. But you sent me a link through the week to a Arsene Wenger article, where Arsene Wenger's basically saying that, listen, we've spent the last 100 years focusing on the physical part of the game, and if we want to evolve, we have to spend the next 100 focusing on the mental part of the game. And so that's what FC Galactico is all about, trying to drive football forward psychologically and deliver those mental toolkits, I guess, to get the extra percentages out of performance. And we co-founded it. Look at that. A man from Ebervale and a man from Pollock with a psychology company. Oh,
I would say you're the brains behind the company, and I'm just the good looks.
Whoa. Yeah, I guess one of the first things to say is that the aim of this podcast as well is to hack into the psychological functions of highly successful people on and off the pitch. And obviously we're going to revert to co-hosts with some insane guests in the near future, but it would be remiss not to start off with you being a serial winner. I've got your list of honors in front of me. Polish League, Super Cup, Turkish Cup, 2 promotions, Team of the Year. Think of that. What a career, man.
It's not bad. It's not bad. And still going. Not
and
out.
Still going strong.
And still going. But yeah, it's been a journey. And had I known what I know now, who knows where that journey might have went. But we don't dwell on the past. We just look to the future and enjoy the present.
You say that though, but I guess you were one of the first people in football, almost probably, to see a psychologist for optimization reasons.
Yeah, it's weird because, do you know, when I first spoke to the first performance psychologist, it's probably I'd heard about it. Funnily enough, when I was in Poland. I knew one of the boys there that used like a performance psychologist coach, and back then I was probably that guy that said, who needs a psychologist? Like, he must be fucked in the head.
Yeah.
And my first dealings with a performance psychologist was probably at the pinnacle of my career when I was at Wolves and we were chasing promotion to the promised land, was playing every week, excelling, doing well, had been called up for Scotland, and yet I just felt like this big weight on my shoulders, like almost like a burnout. And it was my agent who put me on to this guy I'd known that had worked with a few managers. I think it was Brendan Rodgers he name dropped. So Jamie Edwards was his name, and listen, a lot of respect for Jamie for starting me on this journey. He helped me with the fundamentals, and I've just kind of took it from there and working with yourself, and also a bit of self development. Is crazy what the mind can achieve, or should I say, overcome when you think is not possible.
Yeah, man, 100%. Like, we talk a lot that elite performance is 90% psychological, and that surprises a lot of people, I think. But if you think that the body is just a vessel for the brain, like it's the brain making all the decisions, and what is an elite footballer is good decisions over and over again, like on the pitch and off the pitch. So you can almost see when you dig into it like that, you can see the importance of the psychological element. And you said that you felt a burnout. Was there a sense of pressure because you were doing so well at the time, or a sense of living up to expectations?
I think knowing what I kind of know now and the whole mental aspect of things, I just think I was spinning too many plates. There was so much going on. The pressure is not even pressure, because it wasn't pressure. Like I was thriving, really enjoying it. I think it was more the mental demands from within myself,
Yeah.
and from the expectation of like Wolves needing to win every week. So there was no rest for slip ups. So you were just constantly engaged in that optimum peak level. And then chucking Scotland call up, another massive achievement. And at the time, Debs, my wife, she was pregnant, our first kid. So there was so much like emotional ties, emotional things going on in my life. And I was so happy, like so in a good place, but ultimately felt very burdened as well, because there was so much going on. Just didn't know how to inner channel all them things going on, and how to break them down and use it strategically so that I could still maintain them levels.
Probably says a lot about yourself, man, that you had that urge when you were probably at your peak, as you said, was the highest level you'd achieved at that point. Everything was going right in life, everything was going right in career. And instead of just sitting back and like getting a cigar out and going, yeah, man, I've made it to the top of the mountain, that probably urge was deep down like, right, where does the extra come from now? Which probably says a lot about you. And I've always thought you were very naturally like in growth mindset, you're always trying to learn more and more. And that was probably a manifestation of that.
Yeah, and I think looking back now, it's education. Had I known that, like we always speak about, or every walk of life, like prevention is better than cure, isn't it? So I think the best time to start is when you don't have any storms to deal with. So you can ultimately just educate yourself to be prepared for when the worst inevitably does happen, because regardless of how successful you are going to have a blip at some point and need to delve into the tools that you've accumulated.
Absolutely, man. If you look back at that honours list we just read off there, and you had to pinpoint one reason for being a serial winner, because like it's not blowing smoke up your ass, like that's what that is. That shit doesn't happen by accident, man. And I've told you that before in private as well, is that you can fucking do a Super League or whatever and be like, all right, yeah, a bit of luck. But to win multiple times like that ain't no accident. And so you must be doing something repeatedly in different environments as well, which is probably the most impressive part. Like, let's take as read that every professional footballer is talented. They've done their 10,000 hours of meaningful practice by the time they're 18 and whatever we think leads to mastery, but they're all talented. And so the question is, how can they input that talent into their environment and have those things successfully interact? And that's why so many transfers fail. Like you have a player who's amazing at one club and then he'll switch clubs and try and do the same things he did in the last environment. And the slightest tweak, the slightest change, something like having new teammates or playing a slightly different style is enough to throw that player off completely. So Fernando Torres moved to Chelsea springs to mind. Yet yourself, who's gone from environment to environment and quite like radically different ones, Turkey, Poland, Scotland, England, you seem to have adapted like really fucking well.
Yeah, I think from maybe my upbringing and my transition into professional football probably it taught me that nothing is a given. So like I used to have apprenticeship, worked refrigeration, air conditioning, while all my friends were playing professional football, and that was your job. But I think being in the real world and seeing what a proper hard graft is, then even when I made it into football and times got tough, and it'd be easy to maybe chuck in the towel, or when you need to dig deep to show a wee bit of resilience, I had the experience of seeing what the real world was in the other walk of life. So I think that's maybe what pushed me to always appreciate what I had, but never rest on my laurels. So when I moved to Poland, for example, they only had a short summer break. So I think it was like 10 days, maybe 2 weeks max, from their last game to the first training session. Whereas I had finished in Dundee United, I don't know, say the start of May. And it was probably about 6 weeks. Of course, I was still keeping myself fit in that. But my first training session in Poland, I just signed, bit of unknown, like I'd signed over there, new city, new country, new team, expectation from both parts. And I get injured on my first training session because they were almost into like normal training sessions, crossing, finishing, a lot of like strenuous passing and stuff. And I pulled my quad. So right from the very get-go, my back was against the wall, and it could have been make or break almost. And I thought, nah, do you know what? Like this is the time to really double down and see what my character's all about. And I think it was September. It must have been about 2 or 3 months before I actually made my debut, because I kept getting injured from that thigh strain. And I think just trying to get back, like I was determined to get back, and maybe just needed a wee bit more nous and experience to get it right, to fully come back. But then once I get back and was fully fit, that's where it really began for me. Right now is time to show what I can do and embrace this new team, this new culture, this new league, and show what I'm all about.
It's almost like that we talk a lot about like the narratives we tell ourselves, and like in that situation, you could have either gone, right, life is unfair, this it's the worst thing ever, like can't believe my luck, or it could have been, right, I'm just excited to get started, and my job now is to get fit. And that probably stems from, like you said, that period away from football in your early teens, where like I don't even necessarily think it's probably a fear of going back to the real world. It's more of an appreciation, right? Like I say to a lot of the players I work with, like, before you walk onto the pitch, don't forget, you're activated and you're in tunnel vision serial killer mode, but smile as well, because you live in every single boy's dream. Like it's your dream. You were once a 10-year-old with fucking footballers on your wall, dreaming of that, and you achieved the impossible dream. And so it's to be enjoyed, right?
Yeah, and I think it's a very important aspect, that you need to enjoy it even when you're injured. And I think as you get older and more experienced, you will learn that more and more, because it's a short career, and when that's stopped, when it's finished, you'll look back and probably think, oh, why did I not enjoy the moments I was injured, or not playing, or facing adversity? Because ultimately, when it stops, it stops. You don't get another chance at it.
It's crazy.
So I think for me, it's just, make the most of every situation, regardless of what it is. I'll find a solution to deal with it.
And where do them solutions come from, do you reckon? So what's your process for solutions? So me personally, I like to, or one of the tools I've got certainly is I've got a tendency to like catastrophize. So like something small will happen, and I'll be like, oh my God, like it's the worst thing in the world. And so one of my tools is to almost, right, there's not a thing that can happen to me that I couldn't strategize my way through. So a little affirmation almost, and that brings me back down to earth, and I'll rip the thing to the sum of its parts, break it down into the smallest little bits, and be like, right, okay, what's the plan? and that breaking it down almost seems to take his power away, you know. So I wonder where your solution process is.
Yeah, probably the same, strategizing. Also, I think putting into perspective the situation, whatever it may be, and we talk about real life problems. Like if you're not getting selected, is it a real life problem? No, of course it's not. But you need to strategize and figure out what's in your control to change it. And then I think one that I've really learned we're working is never to react to any situation on emotion. Always almost internalize it first, swallow it, digest it, and then plan the next move. I think that definitely helps because it allows you to see everything with a clear conscience, a clear mind as well. It's easy to just fight fire with fire at times, and probably more so than not, that's when you come across problems or make wrong decisions or say and do things in the heat of the moment that maybe will affect you later on down the line that was absolutely no need to have been even processed.
Yeah. Man, I fucking hell. I remember early on in my career, I used to be terrible for it. I used to like within 2 seconds, like that on the keyboard, writing an email, bang, 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 bang. And it's only as you get a little bit older where it's like, right, okay, step back a little. But then you get wiser and it's like, listen, no, if I still feel angry tomorrow, then they will have it both barrels. But, you know, at this moment in time, it's probably not the best.
Of course. And I think even at that point, it's got to be in a professional, constructive, solution-based way. It's not just you're a cunt, whatever, or whatever the situation. I think everything's almost got to be planned, and I think that's the thing that I've learned with the self-growth is that every single minute, every single decision is a thought process. Like there's a right way and a million wrong ways, and the right way is 9 times out of 10 the hardest one to do. But if you can continually and consistently take a step back and choose that, then it's going to build up to making a lot more good decisions than bad, isn't it?
Man, I think it's such a good point because that applies almost on the pitch and off the pitch, is that this idea that elite talent and elite players have an abnormal control over their ability. So like anyone can be moonwalking down the fucking left wing when they're 5-0 up and it's a sunny day and you're feeling great. It's like, yeah, look how much talent I've got. But then the real test comes when it's like things are going wrong. You're down to 10 men, you're not feeling great, you're tired. Can you still display your talent then? And I think that's what the elite players do freakishly well, is retain this sense of control so that they can unleash their talent no matter the circumstance they find themselves in. And that's probably one of the most important gaps, I guess, psychology bridges, is those tools to remain in control, as you say, off the pitch, in life, on the pitch. And that strategizing thing, man, is so important. Something I've used so often. Like you said, people think strategizing is like this big military thing, like this got this military connotation where you have to get around this table and do this big life strategy. But it can be minute by minute. It can be 5 minutes in front of your face. It can be in a game and go, right, this winger is rapid. If I just do what I normally do, he's going to burn me or whatever. Like I'll build a little mini strategy to contain him. Or it can be in life, like, oh my God, I'm having a terrible day. What's the strategy? Like just asking yourself that question is so important, man. So important.
Yeah, I think that's where the little affirmations and anchors bring you back down and ground you, doesn't it? And it allows you to see things clearly, and not irrationally or emotionally. But that takes time and effort and takes work. It doesn't just happen overnight. I think with elite players, like you're talking the world's best, like Messi, he just sees things 2 and 3 steps before anyone. Like that's not by chance. Like that it can't. Of course, he's insanely blessed with talent, but the decision making, how he makes things look so simple. Like he's miles ahead of everyone upstairs, isn't he?
you can say the same for it. Like the list I always reel off: LeBron James, Roger Federer, Tom Brady, Vasil Lomachenko, John Jones, Tiger Woods. You're talking the GOATs in all of these sports. The one commonality is they've all had a performance psychologist from the start. Like there's no random or like fluke element to that. That is the commonality. They all work their brain, they all work their body, and the two are in harmony, and it reflects in how they perform.
Yeah, it's almost like they just go into autopilot, or as known as it is flow state, isn't it? It's just like flow state every game.
It feels like autopilot, but like that.
Yeah.
What the fans see on a Saturday afternoon is just the lag of this string of good habits and good practice and good work that you've put in all week. So
to be
like
one of them,
yeah. Like, so right, let's fast forward from your time abroad, your successful time abroad. You're at Wolves. What a team that was, by the way.
It was not bad. It was not bad.
What a team! Like, we're very, very good friends now. You're the godfather to my baby. We speak most days. I class you as family, absolutely. But my first experience with you probably was, I think it was around November, and you fucking rattled one into the top corner at Elland Road. I'm a Leeds fan. I'm sat in the Cop. I'm like, I think I called you a spice boy, Scottish cunt. Then maybe.
Compliment, I'll take that.
There was a little compliment in there as well. Yeah.
I'll take that.
But yeah, that was my first experience of you. Bent a free kick right into the top corner, and it was fucking glorious, by the way. And then you went on to have a fantastic season, man. How was it? Tell us about the Wolves season.
Yeah, it was a special season, and I think the only way to describe it is everything that we kind of tried, or even individually, seemed to come off. And I think that was just because we were winning and doing well. It's easy to try and express yourself and do things, like we said, isn't it? The true test is when your backs are against the wall. But it almost felt like we couldn't do any wrong. Like that year, just everything that could have went right, and clicked on a individual and collective basis. And it was a really enjoyable time in my career.
And obviously working with Nuno, who's a superb manager. Is there anything that he taught you that you're like, you've taken forward?
Yeah, I think like definitely the tactical aspect of the game. It's funny because coming back to UK, like they're saying it's a foreign manager, but it was all I was used to because I'd been abroad.
Yeah.
But I think you just seen the game differently from the what would you say, the general British way, the typical British way. I think he brought in this style where we were really solid as a unit, very structured and worked on. Everyone knew their kind of roles and what to do defensively, but then gave us the confidence and freedom to then go and attack and be ruthless in attack. And I think you look at some of the players that was in that team, it was a devastating prospect to face them.
Man, I think the right word that you've just said there is freedom. Like that, watching that team, everyone was so free. Like, it's weird. It was such a dichotomy that they were so like finely tuned and structured, yet everyone was so free within that structure. It's crazy, and it's so rare to see. And like you said, some of the players, man, your Ruben Neves of the world, these are the real deal, right?
Yeah, big players. Like a few of them will definitely go on to the top level. I think Jota now is fine at Liverpool. I've seen that day in, day out at training. He's a monster. I'd like to say he learned a lot of that from me, but he was not naturally gifted. But again, great partnership to link up with him. Definitely I want to tell my kids and their kids. It was Yeah, it was a really good team, wasn't it?
It was good, man. It was good to watch. And my only kind of question around that era is, how was there never any scrapping over who's taking the free kicks? Because I'm sure Ruben and Jota can bend one in the top corner.
But so can Basha Douglas at Pollard.
There can be only one.
Do you know what it was? It was, I think there was the mutual respect between us all. Like even on game days, we'd practice 2 or 3 times a week, free kicks, like almost the left side versus the right side. But if it came to the game and if someone was striking the ball well or feeling confident, like there would have been no issues of just taking a step back. And I think that's, everyone wanted the same thing. There wasn't really egos. And that's probably why it worked. I will say on record though that in training I absolutely scored more goals than Robin Evers. But he did it on a Saturday.
And man, it's so that word freedom again, I'm getting the sense of like, as players in that team, you almost gave freedom to each other. It's like, I trust the person next to me so implicitly that if he says he's going to take this free kick, then he's going to take it. And again, that's quite rare in a team.
Yeah, like I mean, very rarely have I came across like teammates that will be like, no, it's my ball, I'm hitting it. Do you know what people will probably say about me? That's the guy that I am. No, it's my ball, I'm hitting it. But look, if someone is feeling confident or wants to step up, like if I'm in a team and we get a free kick anywhere around the box, like I'll always put myself forward because I'll back myself that I'm confident in my own ability to hit it. But I think some people maybe won't be as vocal of that and will just kind of allow it to go through the motions. Or he normally hits them, or he normally hits them. And I think to get the best out of each other is almost letting your barrier down a little bit and saying, right, you know what, I maybe feel that I'm better than you in this area, but if you want to take that, crack on. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. We're all after the same goal here.
Yeah, man, it's almost like shelving your ego a little bit, isn't it? Which again comes with experience, I guess. Like the 19-year-old you would probably be more like, oh, my free kick, I'm having it. I'm the best at free kicks. Whereas the little bit older, it's like, you know what? Let's have a little discussion here.
Yeah,
and then,
of course.
Go on, sorry.
No, I think exactly that. It's just weighing it up and looking and seeing, because there's so many different factors and variants. But ultimately, the person that steps up better score, or else it's back to me the next time.
And like that freakish consistency that you personally displayed, how much of that do you think was to do with happiness?
Probably, yeah, a lot, because at the end of the day, if you're not happy and enjoying what you're doing, then it's hard to do it well, isn't it? And I think that probably shows in performances. If you don't feel within yourself confident, you always hear he's lost confidence, or you need to play with confidence. But confidence isn't just something that you wake up and it's there one day or it's away. Like, I think there's a lot of little ingredients that builds up to allow you to have confidence or get it back if it's lost. Like I've been there. My first probably experience with confidence was when I kept getting injured at Leeds.
Yeah.
And just started to kind of doubt myself. My form wasn't the best, and just felt kind of stop-start. And that was the first time that I properly can honestly say in my career that I had an issue with confidence. And I think that's the time where I had to double down on all the work that I was doing.
It's probably the worst piece of advice ever. Be confident. I know people say with the best of intentions, but like, it doesn't mean anything. As you said, it's just, there's a defined set of ingredients that make up that confidence, and they have to be earned almost with elite inputs over and over again, and toolkits to pull you back from the brink when it starts to go wrong. And so you mentioned Leeds there, and those repeat injuries and the dip in confidence. How did you dig deep and get out of that?
Do you know, looking back now, I probably say I get injured in so it was probably my first season. I think my first injury, I got injured, pulled my hamstring. It must have been around November, December. And up until that point, like I was confident, just not overly confident, but just doing what I do consistently. And then when I get injured, it was like, I think the accumulation of the training regime, the demands, and I just never felt that I could get back to that point where I was at before that injury. So it was kind of stop start, little niggles. And then in March, April time, I did my knee in a tackle. Leeds fans will remember that game because we'd used 3 subs, so I couldn't come off. I came to the side to get my knee strapped up because it was swaying from side to side, and Marcel was screaming at me like, "Get back on!" But I think so. I knew in that moment, like I knew my season was done. I knew I'd done something serious to my knee, and I think instantly, it took me the day to digest it. I can honestly, because of how I was feeling at that moment, like with confidence and form, the next day I felt like a complete weight off my shoulders. Like I was almost like reboot. I didn't have that expectation to do well, to perform. I was like, right, as sad as it is, it was a fresh start for me to get back, rehab, and then go again.
There's a concept that I love sometimes employed in my own life that's called I forget who coined it, but this idea of there's sometimes no harm in living out this idea of nuke it all and start again. Like sometimes things are going so wrong, or there's such a set of circumstances that there's no nobility whatsoever in just like trying to put the house of cards back together. Like sometimes the best choice is literally, right, let the house of cards fall and let's start again tomorrow. Sometimes there's a serious like that. There's nothing noble about going down with the ship, you know. You have to save yourself mentally.
Yeah, of course. And I think a big lesson I definitely learned as well was holding on to the expectation of, right, well, this is what I did at Wolves and had an unbelievable season. Like, why can I not just do the same things here? But different systems, different tactics, different formations, different styles of play. And I think that plays a big part on a player's confidence, is learning to then adapt to the current formations and stuff that manager, as opposed to holding on, right, well, I've did this my whole career, why is it not this way?
We've talked a lot about elite inputs, and it's one of the Galactico method is part of FC Galactico's kind of repertoire, and it's a psychological method over 10 sessions that gives professional footballers the tools that they need to find that little edge. And one of the core kind of DNAs of that is this notion of elite inputs, that you only can control what you can control the controllables. You hear the saying a lot, like your thoughts and your actions are the only things that are fully under your control, and thus they should be the things that you focus on. Football is almost like fucking obsessed with outcomes. It's all about like, right, this amount of assists, this amount of goals, he achieved this, he done this. But that's almost the part where you have the least control. And I guess, obviously speaking to you a lot around that time, that was probably the transition for you as well mentally, is that, right, it's maybe not all about what the outcomes are, as long as I can look in the mirror at the end of the day and go, like, listen, my inputs are as high as ever. Like, you know, if you went from that Wolves season of 15 assists, 5 goals, or whatever the exact number was, and then you slacked off in training and started going to the pub, and then you didn't repeat those things, you'd be like, right, fair enough. You know, I've started living the wrong way, and that's why the numbers have dipped a little bit. But that didn't happen. And I was gonna bring this, I was gonna touch on this later, but we might as well dive into it now around like narratives in football. Like people would maybe say that you didn't repeat that Wolves form. But when you dive into the numbers and the data, it's crazy because you've literally repeated the same form every single season of your career. It's literally freakishly consistent. Yet that season at Wolves, as you said, everything just kind of went right. So if you say 15 assists that season, whereas this season it's maybe 1 assist, but your progressive passing, your crosses into the box, everything's higher now than it was then, which is it's crazy. And it just shows how lost we can get in outcomes and narratives. Whereas it's probably the inputs that need to be watched from afar. And I guess the inputs that also probably need to be watched as a person who wants to achieve their best self. Like, it's no good trying to impress him or trying to achieve this outcome. It's like, right, what parts of this process can I control? And the answer is inputs, the end. And so if you focus down on them inputs, trust the process, you're pretty much going to end up in a good place. Like, you always end up where you aim, you know? And if our aim is elite inputs, right down from the way that you train to the way that you prepare for matches to how you walk into the stadium on match day, like, it all needs to be elite constantly. There's no part of that process that can be overlooked in its importance. Would you say that's a fair reflection of like the transition from, this is brilliant, man of the match, team of the year, and then that didn't happen automatically, and you're like, fuck, man.
Yeah, and I think as a player, especially getting into a new environment, it's the hardest part is probably trusting that process and almost trying to block out the narrative or the bias.
It's hard to, though.
It's very difficult. It is very difficult, and especially if that comes from within, then you're almost second guessing yourself and asking yourself, right, well, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? What am I not doing? But like you said there, the data is there, and I know you can analyze data however you want, but I think when it comes to performance data and the ones that truly do matter and define that how you are performing, then as long as you're doing them, that's all you can control, isn't it? And try and just be patient and trust the process, because it is difficult. It is very difficult, but that's all you can do, because I think if you take your eye off the ball and go any other direction, it's not shooting for the goodness, is it?
It's a dangerous game to shoot for any other direction. Like even 1% aimed elsewhere other than your control is 1% that could have made all the difference. Like there's probably a load of psychological elements as well that factor in to it all, and to that reason for your kind of freakish consistency in inputs. So like I break it down to resilience, emotional intelligence, conscientiousness, and adaptability as the 4 kind of reasons that a player succeeds multiple times over. And those 4 things tend to block out the main barriers to elite performance, which is stress, tension, anxiety, pressure. So they combat that pretty well. And I think that you're probably one of the best examples of that, because you're known as an attacking fullback. This season, obviously, Blackburn haven't done as well as they would have hoped, and you've had to defend a lot more than your reputation would probably suggest. And yet your defensive numbers, again, through the roof. It's like you're one of the top 5, I think, tackles won in the league. It's crazy. So like the ability to adapt like that to something that you're not perhaps known for is also like massively impressive. And when I asked the question at the start about how you were willing to repeat your success over and over again. I guess you're very high in those four things, particularly adaptability and emotional intelligence. You know, this is something you've consciously felt?
Yeah, definitely. But and I think this is probably one of Marcelo's masterstrokes, because he gets players, the way that he works and does the trainings, he gets players to really focus, like zoom right in to the minute details. So whereas before I was probably known that I was good as an attacking fullback, like my game was about getting forward, crossing, creating chances, I probably never paid any attention to my defensive duties. But yet, first and foremost, I'm a fullback, wingback.
Yeah.
And I think until it was kind of highlighted under a microscope in minute detail in terms of the drills and stuff that Marcelo did defensively, it allowed you to almost see the importance of calculating everything and being completely switched on. And I think now I'm definitely much more focused when it comes to defending. Like, you don't get a minute to switch off. And I think that's probably why I feel much more confident in my defensive capabilities. I was never blessed with blistering pace, but I think timing is almost better than speed, especially when it comes to defending, because it's just anticipating the ball and seeing things before they actually happen and snuffing out danger. And I think that's why I've quietly been quite successful in that aspect this season. But again, it's funny, the narrative, because if you, without the numbers and looking at it, you'll just think, it's just a kind of average to normal season. But yet I feel really confident in my ability to defend.
You're, in the terms of the numbers, you're having a better season now than you did at Wolves, which is crazy. And you almost bought into the narrative a little bit yourself there, where you say, like, I'm not known for being the fastest, but then I've watched your career a lot. You've never been burnt for pace once. I can't remember one time where you've been done, like absolutely fucking done for pace. Can you?
There's probably a few, but I'll just kid on that there's none yet. But no,
I mean, like, exposed as in, like, right.
Yeah, no.
An example, Ian Hart used to play for Leeds. He was brilliant, great left foot, but he was so slow on the turn, and he got pinpointed a lot, and he got badly burned for pace a few times. Like, but that's never even come close to happening to you ever.
I think now is probably more. I won't try and sell myself in that situation to allow that to happen. I think I'm already thinking maybe 2 or 3 steps before it. If I'm playing against a really quick winger, I'll need to get my positioning right to allow myself to anticipate to get to a lot of first balls. And that's where it definitely helps, because I think almost like Leeds as well, when you're playing man to man, you're not allowed, or you're not really given a bit of positional leeway, because you need to be tight man for man. So it almost nullifies using that aspect of your game, because you need to be tight man to man, and it's literally becomes a physical man-on-man race. And that's
how
maybe
frustrating was that, Bash? How frustrating was that? Because I remember we talked once, and I'm sure you won't mind me sharing this because you've just half told the story yourself, but we talk about that idea of strategizing, and right, if this player is really fast, for example, I'm going to adapt this way. I remember you telling me once in training that you were being shouted at to go man-to-man with Helder, and you're thinking, if I go man-to-man with him, I'm not a fool, I'm not slow, but if I go man-to-man with Helder, I'm going to get burned. Whereas I know if I strategize and step off a little bit, that's going to nullify everything that he stands for. So how frustrating is that when you're thinking, like, I've got the solution for this problem, but you're telling me to do it in a different way?
I think the structure needs to suit that as well. Like you can't be like one person doing that and everyone else is doing man for man. So I think that's maybe why it struggled a little bit. But yeah, you need to find solutions because other players are going to be better than you in certain aspects, aren't they? So if someone's, for example, much quicker than me, then I need to be thinking, right, well, how can I eradicate that and
of course
and use my brain to get one over on them.
I think those in-game strategies are something that I'm keen to start teaching to academy players, because it's probably something a lot of players do, but I almost feel like it needs to be articulated as a concept to people that they should be consciously strategizing when they're playing. It's very, very easy to fall into autopilot in a negative way, whereas it should constantly be, and I don't mean in sense of like, let's change everything I am to adapt to an opponent. I don't mean that at all. You should always be you, imposing your will on the game, but you should also be aware of your environment and the strategy that goes with it. As I said before, the talent needs to intertwine with this environment. And so if you're playing against someone who has this particular attribute that's better than yours in the same kind of sphere, say pace, for example, or height, then it'd be ridiculous not to strategize a way through that. Like if you're playing against someone who's a foot taller than you and you just keep trying to jump up and head the way you always head, it's never going to work. And so it has to become about strategy. But I think that's almost lost in the message. And I don't think players are told that enough. Like consciously be thinking, what's the strategy? What is the strategy? What is the strategy? Or what's not working? What can I change? And that should be happening all the way through a game, I think.
Yeah, I think that's for 90 minutes, isn't it? And that's probably how you get into flow state, is just constantly being switched on and nogging into that autopilot mode, because how many times you see it, and I've been accountable myself, like you hear the term like, oh, he switched off for a minute, but that minute can be the difference in a split second. So it's just trying to consistently be concentrated and focused, like in the now. And I think if the more you can do that, the more your performance level definitely increases.
It's almost about developing that inner voice as well, isn't it? And that self-talk. I think that comes as you get a little bit older as well. Like you almost parent yourself and talk yourself through situations in life and in football. And I think that's a very healthy part of the strategizing process, is to consciously say to yourself when you're playing or when you're facing a situation, right, okay, this is what's unfolding in front of me. This is the plan. And like have that conversation with yourself rather than just trying to, as you said at the start, trying to emotionally react to everything.
Yeah, and I think probably on that basis, a big factor that can definitely be learned by a lot of people is dwelling and holding on to something that's happened. So for example, a striker missing a penalty, you see players that affects them the whole game, whereas the older and wiser you get, it's like, right, okay, yeah, this has happened, but I think it's about the message that you tell yourself then, like it's not going to change. So it's about then strategizing to move forward and not holding on to it.
And relentless focus on them elite inputs as well. It's like if you misplace 10 passes, the 11th is still a fresh pass. It doesn't matter that the previous 10 have been misplaced. They don't impact our 11th whatsoever. And it's almost about reminding yourself of that. It's like, right, this is a fresh set of inputs, regardless of the 10 that's gone before. Whereas, as you say, a lot of players can get lost in the narrative of, right, well, I'm just playing terrible today, and that's how it's going to be for the rest of the match.
It's difficult. It's difficult as well, though, because then, again, the narrative and opinion is then, so you get a specific player that does that, the narrative will be, oh, he doesn't care, like he's misplaced numerous passes. Whereas he might just be focused on, right, the next one. But it can come across that he's a bit selfish in that department and not caring, whereas all he's trying to do is correct it and think about the next one.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed. Absolutely agreed. And it's probably
with our resilience, finding that balance. Yeah, it's finding the balance, isn't it?
It is, of course. And like, I think the confusion comes that people think that by saying, right, the previous mistakes don't matter, that means that you don't care. And I don't think it's that in the slightest. I think it's evidence that you care a lot, because you're trying to like literally put the handbrake on in your brain to correct your future self for the benefit of the team.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think the message you tell yourself is that if you've made that mistake, okay, I've made that mistake, but this is a fresh one, right? What do I do to eradicate making that same mistake?
Yeah.
But these things that happen so quick, and I think that's why it needs to be trained, because these decisions are happening so fast and consistently that you sometimes feel you maybe don't have time to react.
And again, that's the huge advantage of developing that inner voice. And that inner voice is developed off the pitch, so that is incorporated into the autopilot and the flow state that goes with the game, you know? So like, as you say, it's all happening 1,000 miles an hour on match day. And so there's no time to teach yourself how to strategize in the middle of a match on a Saturday afternoon. Like, that shit needs to be learned in training, needs to be internalized off the pitch, needs to be learned at home. And then you get to match day and it's almost like that's just a part of your toolkit, in the same way putting your boots on is.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's all a work in progress, isn't it?
So Marcelo Bielsa's training, brutal. Yeah.
It's different. I think it's, apart from murder ball, everyone knows about murder ball. I think the training, it's more mentally demanding than it is physically. But there's a purpose behind that, and it's obviously to get you to completely zoom in and be focused on the minute details and never switch off. So yeah, it can feel repetitive and long and dragged out at times, but there's a bigger message behind it, and it's probably not until you're away from that environment, like me now, that I can see why a lot of these drills were done specifically.
So many players say, I hated that at the time, but then when I left, I'm like, oh yeah, I see it now. And I reckon that I've said this to you before, that I reckon it's obvious now that you've played under Bielsa. Like little tweaks, like the intensity that you close down. It's like you're so drilled in the Bielsa way that still comes out, almost like you were telling me the other day about Marcelo. He says when you're closing down, you should always be impacting the ball. Like you either need to do the turnover, you need to make him misplace a pass, or you need to do something that impacts the ball when you're closing down. And then when I heard that message from you, you watch football and you see so many players doing the fake closing down, and the not necessarily the fake closing down, that's a bit harsh, but the thinking they're closing down right, but it's really not right. Whereas the Marcelo way is like, right, what's the detail of this closing down specifically? And I think that's a big one.
Yeah, definitely. And but I think learning from that as well is, I think the right way. So what's right and what's wrong? And
Yeah.
I think the right way is obviously the way that the manager wants you to do it at that present time. Because as a fullback, for example, growing up, I'd been coached and taught, like, don't dive in, don't sell yourself. You'd hear the old term, jockey him down the line. Whereas under Marcelo, like, there was no such thing as like jockeying you. When you went to press, you had to go with a purpose to anticipate and win the ball. And we did a lot of drills and training where you would take yourself out of the game, and it was about recovery. So again, there's that aspect, game related, that you got to anticipate. If you don't get it, it's about the recovery back in to have a second bite at it. And it worked, like, because everyone is on the same page doing the same things. Like if it was only one person doing that off his own back, then you'd be vulnerable, wouldn't you?
How did the team and yourself find that environment? So in a sense of, I guess the phrase would be learning agility. So you've always been taught this way, and yet you come to this manager when you're 28, 29, and it's almost like you have to unlearn things that you've done your whole life. and same for a lot of the players around that time. How was that?
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing was probably everyone just swallowing their pride, swallowing the ego. The right way is that manager's way at that time, like I said. And look, it's probably a results-driven industry. Had there not been results, it would have been difficult to believe in it.
Yeah.
Marcelo used to always say, I think it was clever because he would say, my job is not to tell you what to do. He said, my job is to convince you that it's the right way to do it. Now, that terminology, like once you're away from it, you realize how smart it actually is.
Yeah.
So he makes you willingly want to do it that way, and it's not because I need to. And I think because you were getting results, it's easy then to buy into it. A lot of credit needs to go to the guys though, because it was a humble group.
Of course.
And it was difficult, but they had to be really persistent and patient to trust the process because it was a transition period.
Yeah.
And I think now, like, you're reaping the rewards. They don't fear anyone they go to play because they know they've got such a defined way of playing it, and it works on its day.
You know, that second season when Leeds got promoted, obviously you were out of the team for the latter half anyway. And I know when you left Leeds, Victor Orta, the legend that is, wrote you a real kind letter from the heart, which was, it was emotional. I think it's an absolutely incredible touch, but knowing Victor like we do, that's like befitting of the man, but it's still something he didn't have to do. And I think that probably says it all about. Now, listen, let me preface this by saying, I know you're fucking no one's cheerleader. I know that. Know you want to be playing. But if we go back to elite inputs, that second season, you're not in the team. There's 99 ways you could have burnt the world to the ground and fucking been like, this is not fair. Like, I've just been in the team of the year. This is great. And like, done whatever. But you still chose the one way that was the elite input. And that was by supporting the team emotionally. Like, there's so many players who I speak to is like, right, fucking Bash was instrumental in that second season, literally instrumental with little words of advice or, you know, encouraging people. And I think even little things you probably didn't even pick up on yourself. Like, whenever we scored, you were the first to run on the pitch. Like that is the exact definition of elite, is that things are not going your way. Your back's against the wall. You're in a storm, yet you're still performing those elite inputs over and over again. So I just would be interested in getting your thoughts on how much of that was conscious and how hard it was to stick to that one right thing when 99 others would have been easier, yet wrong.
Yeah, it was difficult. It was definitely difficult that season because, like you said, that for no fault of my own, it was. If you actually look at the games, I started the season and again picked up a little injury. But my last game was against Wigan. I think it was Wigan. Yeah, we won 3-1, I think, and I played really well. I literally remember doing the clips and Marcelo going over him, and he's like, literally didn't do anything wrong. And then I got a little niggle, and I said to myself, look, the season before I was kind of in and out with injuries. When I was fit, I didn't want to put myself out again. I wanted to give myself the best possible opportunity to play consistently. So I didn't play the next game. And from then, I wasn't in the team. The guys were winning, which is understandable. But I just felt that it was kind of out with my control. I was training well, training professionally. I think it would have been absolutely easy to chuck the toys at the pram, but it was never ever going to be a decision of mine because it gets me nowhere ultimately, because it's about myself at the end of the day. And I need to be the best version of me in whatever circumstances to be the best for the team.
And the best as a dad and a husband. like it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah, and I think that's one of the big things, is being first and foremost a really good human being with good values, which will allow you to transcend that into the football environment.
100% agreed. And a good friend. One of the questions that came, like I put on Instagram before, any questions for you, and one of the questions that came in from a few different people was around, you've probably been asked this a million times before, but around the mental tools that you used when you got promoted with Wolves and you were sold, then you got promoted with Leeds and you were sold. Now, before you answer that, I've got a little theory that I want to throw your way. That we talk a lot about the known, which is in life what we know, where we're comfortable, everything's in order as we expect it to be, and the unknown, which is the complete opposite. Like, it's chaos, we don't know what's there, it's unpredictable, and the optimal way of living is having one foot in the known and one in the unknown, so you're comfortable and safe where you are, but you're still striving towards improving yourself. So many people fear the unknown, and so many people are ripped apart by the unknown. My theory is this: early on in your career, where you voluntarily stepped into Poland, Turkey, like you're forthrightly embracing the unknown when you didn't need to. So I think that when you got promoted with those two teams and then you were told you were surplus to requirements, you've been cast into the unknown. But for you, it's like, yeah, it sucks, but the unknown is my friend. Like, I've voluntarily made friends with the unknown many times over. And you probably didn't consciously do that. But knowing you as well as I do, I think somewhere deep down inside, that's like the kind of person you are. It's like, right, let's never rest on the laurels. Let's see how I can stretch myself, what I'm capable of. I read this great thing yesterday about the Navy SEALs. So the reason that the Navy SEALs come via water and the ocean was because when they started, they literally sat down and went, right, what's the most harsh, unforgiving, ridiculous environment in the world? What environment is all of our enemy going to be scared of? And the answer was like the ocean is the most unforgiving, ridiculous, harsh place. And they're like, right, that's going to be our home. That is going to be our home because that's who we are. We step into the unknown ourselves. And I guess that's what I reckon. And correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe I'm kind of speaking it out in a different way that you've maybe internalized yourself, that's why it was not easy, but that's why you were able to ride out such a catastrophe. And it is a personal catastrophe. You've got fucking grafted your ass off to get promoted, and then you're told. So I guess,
yeah, no,
if you can speak about that.
I think you're probably spot on. Obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing because you can look back and see where you went right or wrong. I think doing what I did in my earlier years in my career and going to these places, definitely out with my comfort zone, allowed me to deal with the unknown and adapt a lot easier than probably a majority of the people. So yeah, when that harsh news, or should I say unfair news, was given to me, it was probably easier for me to digest than maybe a lot of other people. Don't get me wrong, it did still hurt because I felt, especially at Wolves, that I'd earned that opportunity, but also knowing what I know now, that it doesn't matter if you've earned it or not. Like, life isn't fair, and if you expect it to be fair, then you're constantly going to be frustrated. So it was raw, it hurt for a minute, but as soon as the next opportunity was there, or the next move, it was like, right, full focus on that. Like, we don't dwell on the past. I didn't want it to be a negative. So ultimately, yeah, it was raw, and it was sore to take. I think it probably felt like more people, or probably within my close proximity, like my close circle, I probably felt that other people were more furious and angry than actually I was. I think my attitude was like, yeah, it sucks, but what can I do? Like, there's nothing that I can do, so I need to get on with it. And then it kind of got to the point where my mum, for example, would be like, oh, that's a shambles, like, it's not fair, you deserve to be there. And I'd be like, look, let it go, mum, it don't matter. Do you know what I mean? I'm here and now. This is the present moment.
What's that quote you love about, if you expect life to be fair, it's like expecting the lion not to eat you because you didn't try and eat the lion?
Yeah,
or something
so
along them lines.
Yeah, it just makes sense, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, you can be nice and have all the morals in the world and expect to be treated fairly, but it doesn't work that way, does it?
It probably ties in nicely to what we talked about before, in a combination of self-talk and strategizing, like almost asking yourself the question, right, it's all gone wrong here. What is Basher Douglas about when it all goes wrong? And like, that's a big question to ask yourself. A really big question, because it involves being vulnerable. Whereas the easy option is to go, right, life is unfair. This is shit. He's a wanker. He's a dickhead. Because then you've got no accountability, like nothing. It's like everyone else's fault except my own. And life should be fair, and it's not. And I'm just going to be resentful for the rest of my days. Whereas it's like, right, well, ask yourself the question, who am I when this happens? Who am I? And you'll be surprised at the answer. And I guess like the way you bounce back from that was incredible, I think. And you got to feel stronger for yourself, right?
Yeah, I think when it comes to like the self-growth and mindfulness and stuff, it's hard to measure it. Like, I have this conversation with my wife all the time. Like, when you start, I don't know, yoga, it's easy to measure how flexible you are. But if you start meditation, it's hard. You can't measure like how good your mindfulness is.
Yeah.
I think it's just when the only way to measure it is when a storm comes or when you need to use it and you can get back out of it. That's your measurement there. You know, right? Yep, it's working. Like, keep going.
I guess that's one of my beliefs in why psychology has been so slow in coming into football, especially as like we can measure everything in football now, heart rate, a number of sprints, everything's a measurement, everything's definitive. Whereas, as you say, mindfulness and mental strength, that can't be measured. And I think there's an uncomfortableness with things that can't be measured in football. I was saying to Paudy and Tom the other day around LeBron James says it needs to be rephrased as from mental health to mental fitness, which I think is like a beautiful way of looking at it. And then if you class it as mental fitness, it almost doesn't need to be measured as much, because it's like you go to the gym for your body, so you go to the gym for your mind.
Yeah, it becomes conditioning then, doesn't it? And now this stigma, mental health, almost it points towards like you're broken almost. And I think that's definitely not the case. Like, I think when you say mental health, it automatically insinuates that you need help. Whereas, of course, people medically do need help and stuff.
Of course.
And that's where you've got doctors and stuff. I think rephrasing it or seeing it that way as a mental fitness definitely will help you understand it better and say, right, well, okay, my goal is to condition my mind to make it as fit as possible, like you would running.
Man, if we say like before, 90% of elite performance is psychological. And so if you've never worked your mind as a footballer, there's 90% of you that you don't even know yet. Like, there's 90% to explore, which is a lot of wiggle room to go, hang on a second, this has got this short career. How do I squeeze every last drop of juice out of it, you know? And if you've got to where you are on 10%, like, Jesus Christ, what the fuck what is lurking in the 90? And I guess that's the gap to bridge. And that's what we're trying to do with our company, and the direction we're heading in is trying to bridge that gap. And I think that people like yourself, who, I want to say brave in speaking out, but that almost sounds like, again, like you've been broken and like you've been brave in speaking out, but it's not that at all. It's like you've always been quite open and pinning that as a badge of honor. Like, right, I went to see a performance psychologist because I wanted to get everything I could out of myself, and which again must have been tough in itself.
Yeah, I think the whole stigma around it, like saying a performance psychologist soon will be the cool thing to do. You know what I mean? It will be the cool phase to go through. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual. Like if you want it or not. And some people are blessed and lucky enough that they maybe feel that they don't need it. Nothing gained, nothing lost. But I think the people that do seek it out and want to try and improve whatever aspect, like they'll be dumbfounded how much they can improve by all the small outputs to give a big output.
The gains are monumental, man. And like, I think, again, people think psychology and they think the cliche sofa where you're going to be sat down and ask questions about your childhood and all that shit. Whereas actually, like let's just take the Galactico method, for example. It's like, right, here's the psychology of communication. Like, who would have thought that's an important part of being an elite player? But it is, because you're in a team where you literally have to transmit messages for the whole 90 minutes to get the best out of each other. So surely knowing the inner workings of communication, huge. Again, like having the toolkit to verbalize this notion of elite inputs, having affirmations, knowing how to activate yourself for a match day, knowing how to take feedback, knowing how to maintain motivation. These are things that don't take a lot of time to learn.
No, and I think learning them though is you need to be careful with the expectation and reality. Like if you start a performance psychology course or delve into the self-growth, like, doesn't mean you're automatically going to sign for Real Madrid or Barcelona.
Yeah,
I think it's that's maybe the expectation. If you do that, like, automatically you're going to reach new levels. Of course you're going to reach new levels, but I think it's reaching new levels of yourself.
Always you versus you, bro, right? Always.
Yeah, of course, always. And the older and wiser and uglier we get, that's when you really see that it is you versus you on every occasion.
I think it's such an important point that you raise as well about, I think a lot of people go into growth mentally, spiritually, and think that, okay, if I read this book or if I learn this bit of information, then like, that's it, I've clocked it. Like, I'll read this book on meditation and then that's me. That's meditation done, complete. But in actual fact, it's this ongoing process that needs to be revisited, but not revisited in a way that's like, oh, fuck, like a chore, but like enjoyable revisiting. Like, I know you get a lot from going on nature walks, myself too, and we go on them together sometimes, and it's just great just to get out into nature and like explore what's on your doorstep, Fuck, it sounds like a Brokeback Mountain. I'll have to cut this bit out. Sometimes we go camping and no. So we dress as cowboys. It's perfectly normal.
Yeehaw. It is.
But no, I think that it's this ongoing process that it's not a destination that you need to reach. It's like this, the destination is an illusion in all of life. Like Happiness Island, I call it, does not exist. The happiness comes from the journey, the ups and downs of the journey. Without fucking I've just quoted Brokeback Mountain, so I might as well quote Ronan Keating. Life is a roller coaster, and you just gotta ride it.
Highs and lows, swings and roundabouts.
But so I think that that's the big takeaway is on anyone thinking of embarking on the mindfulness journey or the psychological journey is the process is an enjoyable one. and it's one that never ends. And
No, and I think you said an important word there, happiness. Like,
yeah,
I think even the understanding of that, like, happiness is a choice. Like, you can train yourself to be happy, but it requires you to put all them inputs, like having your routine and good inputs. If you put bad inputs, well, of course you're never going to be happy.
of course.
And
It's
then I
just all
think
interest
also
earned,
it's,
isn't it?
and I think also it's really defining to yourself what is happiness.
Yeah.
Because
Agreed.
if you say happiness is retired, lying on my yacht in the middle of wherever, then realistically you're never going to be happy, are you? Whereas if you say to me, like, happy is my 2 kids healthy, missus, food on the table, then I'm always going to be happy. Like, I'm absolutely materialistic that they won't matter in the slightest.
Do you know, it's so intuitive what you just said there, because they did a huge study on people's understanding of happiness, and they found that when people say happy, they basically mean that there's no sadness. Like, to them, happy means that there's no catastrophe in their life, which is a loose definition, because again, that means that you'll never reach happiness, because you're almost looking back, you're counting the things that are not there as happiness. So like, how do you then be satisfied with the things that are there? And so I think that one of the important distinctions is that meaning and purpose is probably what drives happiness more than anything. It's like, what can you do that's meaningful? What is your purpose in life? And one of those purposes is to keep, well, as we said before, to keep stepping into the unknown, to keep pushing yourself forward, to keep voluntarily fighting the storms, to see your kids healthy and happy, to control that inner voice so you come home and go, do you know what? I've had a terrible day. Baby number 1's healthy. Baby number 2's healthy. Perfect day.
Yeah, I think it's taking the positives from every situation, like just reframing it in your mind, because that's where the mind can be so powerful as well, isn't it? You can almost trick yourself into changing the reality if you say the right things to yourself.
Something I've been doing recently. So I have to get up early to walk the dog, obviously, and fell into this horrible routine of that being a chore. Like, oh, just want to start my day. Like, this is a distraction for my day. And it got to the point where I was like just waking up annoyed, but just the rephrase of how lucky am I to have a dog who I love, have the woods on my doorstep, to be healthy and have to go for a walk. So it's about like celebrating those little wins.
Yeah, perspective, isn't it? And celebrating them little ones every day.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Well, I'm acutely aware that you've got babies to go and attend to, and it's very late, but I appreciate you jumping on. And you're my brother, and I love you. And thank you very much for being so open and honest.
Feeling is mutual.
Top man, top man. And to anyone listening, watch out for FC Galactico. We're going to take over the fucking world.
That's the plan.
Peace and love, Bash. I'll text you in a bit.
You too, brother. Take care. Love to the
See you
fam.
soon, my bro.
Ciao, ciao.
Bye, bye, bye.